as I do have two monitors, but not today. So it's a it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I think we've managed it.
Well, if anything, the last year has taught us is how to overcome and adapt.
Yes, that's right. So according to my wristwatch, we have reached our start time, and so welcome everybody. We will have a session for approximately 2 hours today. I'm Al Morton, co-chairing the benchmarking methodology working group with Sarah Banks. Hello, Sarah.
Good morning.
And we have our alternate ops area director with us today, Rob Wilton. Rob, welcome.
Hello all.
And so we have actually not too deep an agenda today, so we can afford a little bit to take some time with discussions and so forth, and that's probably a good thing. So we will do that today. Let's see. There's something else I wanted to. Oh yes. So we have the note well, which we always go through here. But our own version of this is that we work as individuals and we try to be nice to each other, and those are not too hard to do. But then also, as a reminder of the IETF policies, such as patents and the code of conduct, it's meant to, this slide is meant to remind you that we have policies in those regard. Everything you say or do at a meeting is a contribution. As such, is covered by the IPR policy. And if you have any questions, there's a whole list of best current practices that you can refer to, and the privacy policy. And if you have encountered someone not working respectfully with you, we have the ombuds persons and the ombuds team, and a website where you can get in touch with them or learn more about that process. Any questions about the note well? Good. All right. So as I mentioned, here's our agenda. Do we have any volunteers to take notes in the normal list of folks who are attending? Okay. So this is the quietest part of the meeting. And
I'm happy to volunteer if no one else is.
Well, thanks very much, Rob. I was hoping to get hoping to get you some help there, but you did volunteer in advance, and we very much appreciate that. And actually, if anyone wants to help Rob, the tool is our let's see. The tool is our note-taking tool here on the user interface. And actually, to help out here very quickly, Rob, and hopefully I won't crash everything. I'm going to. Oh yeah, I've got to click it yet. All right, and then oh yeah, good. What is this? All right. So yeah, so this is actually the past. The agenda version 1. Oh, maybe it's okay. Yeah, this is fine. All right, this is good. So that's perfect. Thank you. So we've got the agenda to work from in the CodeEMD note-taking tool. Excellent. Thank you very much. All right.
Rob. I'll do my best to help out. It's Maciek. Hi.
Hi, Maciek. Yeah, good to hear your voice, and thank you for your offer of help. Everyone appreciates it. So then we can easily monitor Jabber and other things in the Meetecho interface that our Meetecho developers have kindly provided. Again, thank you for that, guys. And we've gone through the IPR and the note well. So then now we'll quickly talk about the agenda. Any bashing needed? We have the working group status that we'll talk about. Some feedback on the back-to-back frame draft we'll cover quickly because it probably affects a lot of things. Then we have the working group drafts. Some of these will go quickly, others we'll need to talk about a bit. And then a proposal that received a lot of discussion over the last interim period between meetings, the Yang data model. So we'll go in this order, and any comments or any bashing needed on that. All right, sounds good. So if there's any other business and if there's any other time, we'll cover items at the end if folks want to talk for a few minutes. And then we'll move ahead with the agenda. Thank you. So here's the quick status. The EVPN draft is back to the working group post area director review. And Sarah has called for a working group last call there a day or so ago. And then after that, we will return to publication requested if it's a favorable last call. Thank you for moving that along, Sarah. And thanks to Brian Monkman for comments and Sudin, the lead author, for providing a draft for this meeting. So I just mentioned the back-to-back frame draft. It's approved, and I'll talk about those implications in a moment or two. They're part of this slide deck. So in next generation firewall benchmarking, we had a working group last call on version 05, which really generated a lot of good comments. And I'm going to shut my email down now, I think. Good. All right. So now we have the revised version 06. And looking it over, I think we're going to want a confirmational working group last call after, and after some more looking at it, we may want to resolve some things, which I'll talk about today. But then, we're going to give, I think we're going to give folks a little more time to look at this and make sure that all the many comments the first working group last call precipitated have been resolved. So thanks. And we have a main topic to talk about there too, the status of that document. So then proposals keep coming. We're trying to make way for new work here, I think. And with all the drafts we've talked about just before, and we did adopt new work, as I mentioned, the multiple loss rate search, which is part of our working group documents now. Most of the proposals are very familiar to us, so we should probably try to make some adoptions. Let's say ones that. Working group drafts or individual drafts that are really receiving attention from the working group, we can probably consider them as strong candidates for adoption. All right, so on the milestones, we're a little bit behind on a few things here, but I think we can resolve quite a few of these fairly quickly and early this year. And then we'll be in a position to update others, add some more, maybe drop a few of these where we don't see any progress, and that's a topic for the chairs to deal with. So any questions on the working group status? I see we've got some stuff in the chat here. Oh, good afternoon. Oh, all right. Sorry, Rob. That was probably a half hour ago. All right, let's go back up here. Good. All right. So I think this was shared with the working group, but just in case it wasn't, I'm back showing a slide here titled Transport Area and Transport Area Director Review of the back-to-back frame benchmarking update draft. So we had exactly one sentence in the draft, and it drew upon the guidance from RFC 2544, which specified a simple waiting time for the device under test queues to empty after the transmitted load ceased at the end of a trial. And that time, traditionally and for many years, has been sufficient at 2 seconds. So we got a transport area review of the back-to-back frame draft, which basically pointed out that the buffer sizes in our devices under test today could be very much longer than the buffer lengths we've tested in the past. They could be 1.5 seconds long, and they could be what the transport area calls buffer bloat size buffers. And anything in the 1 second realm, 1 second, 2 seconds, whatever it happens to be, if you're sending with a high enough rate to fill the buffers of the device under test, then the implication is that you likely have to wait longer than 2 seconds, and to be safe, you might have to wait 30 seconds or more for all frames to exit the device under test. I kind of found that to be a bit shocking, but this was the advice that we got. And I have to say that once this discussion got rolling, our old friend and Chairman Emeritus Scott Bradner weighed in on the topic and helped to clarify it. And we all basically recognized, especially, it took some time for me to recognize what exact components we needed to nail down in order to express this clearly, especially because, in fact, the buffer sizes that I've been benchmarking recently are very, very much smaller than anything that would be called buffer bloat. We're working in the microsecond range, let's put it that way. And that's why it's important to have the correction factors that we have here and so forth. It's good. It's been a good use of this draft. So here's where we ended up with text, and it's a lot more than 1 second. I'm sorry. It's a lot more than one sentence now, as you can see. So in the section on the test for a single frame size, each trial in the test, this is where you're trying to find the longest burst of frames that will pass through loss-free. So each trial requires the tester to send a burst of frames, and with the minimum interframe gap, and we count the corresponding frames forwarded by the DUT or looking for zero loss. So the duration of the trial includes 3 required components, and this is the text we agreed on and IESG approved. So the first component is the time to send the burst of frames. The second component is the time to receive the transferred burst of frames, and this, of course, might overlap the first component in time. And then a third component of time, at least 2 seconds, not overlapping the time to receive the burst in 2, and to ensure that the DUT buffers have depleted. So longer times must be used when conditions warrant, such as when buffer times are greater than 2 seconds and are measured, or when the burst sending times are greater than 2 seconds. So care is needed since this time component directly increases the trial duration, and many trials and tests comprise a complete benchmarking study. So we can't really just increase this waiting time without an overall time penalty. And those of us who've been, testing and testing and testing and waiting for results to show up, the waiting time after a trial has a direct impact. So it's a balance to strike, and I think we've got some wording here now that that does that. So, and we also mentioned the upper limit for the time to send each burst must be configurable to values as high as 30 seconds. The buffer time results reported at or near the upper limit are likely invalid. We saw some of that in the open platform for NFV benchmarking testing, where basically at the larger frame rates, the packet forwarding rate was equal to the back-to-back frame at the large for the large frame sizes, and that means you don't accumulate a buffer or a queue, and you basically send and send and send, and then you report this maximum configured time and buffer length. The resolution for that is something else we've attacked in this draft, where we have the RFC 2544 throughput tests take place first, and then any tests where the frame size yields the maximum theoretical frame rate, then you don't test that for back-to-back frame benchmark and the attempt to infer the buffer time. So I've talked a lot. Any questions or comments about that? No. All right. Well, this may very well impact our future drafts, because we're likely to get sort of the same transport area comment regarding buffer bloat sizes, and we have to be ready for it. And that's why I share this experience. Maybe we can head that one off at the pass in our future work where this is relevant. Okay. So that's the Sherman status, and let's check out our agenda here quickly. So our next topic is the EVPN draft status, and Sarah, I'll give you another opportunity here to explain what happened and where we are. Thank you. Sarah? All right. Could someone confirm that I'm still being heard?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Well, then I'll cover this quickly. As I said, we had a good couple of reviews, and this is now in working group last call. I think the last day is March 23rd. So that covers our responsibilities here, and we'll move this along. And again, thanks to everyone, Brian and Sadine, who helped get the draft to 07. Much appreciated. All right. So then, Brian, I've got your next generation firewall benchmarking draft queued up here next. So I'll bring up the slides, and I will try to do something here with the screen to make them maximally visible.
Okay.
All right.
Just go to the second slide.
Got it.
All right. So just jumping right in, as Al indicated, we received a boatload of comments and suggestions. Our our count estimates that it was like well over 70. A significant number of them were requests for clarification and grammatical changes. If you do a diff between 5 and 6, you'll see what was changed in this area. The rest of this is going to be sort of going over what we consider to be the significant changes. So, in examination of the intent of the draft and the additions of the security effectiveness section to include network IPS, we changed the target of the draft from next generation firewalls to network security devices. Al brought to our attention early on in the review process we needed to consider whether or not this supersedes RFC 3511. We had some internal discussions and reviewed it, and we do believe that this draft should supersede 3511. And we had text in the beginning of the draft explaining why. And under the testbed setup of Section 4, we modified that somewhat to reference Section 3 of RFC 6815 in order to avoid reinventing the wheel. And again, that was a suggestion from one of the reviewers. We clarified the security definitions contained in Section 4.2, Table 3. It's pretty significant rewrite just to make it a lot clearer and to sort of bring some sort of commonality to the language used to line up with other definitions used elsewhere. Then we did a significant rewrite of Section 6.3, which was originally just the KPI section. We changed the name to benchmarks and KPIs, and the goal was to clarify and eliminate any of the ambiguities that existed, and there were a number of them. And we used RFC 2647 definitions where it was applicable, and it was applicable in a number of cases. I think 3 or 4 of them in the section.
So those are the terms and definitions. Just to give folks a little background here who might be new to this, those are the terms and definitions that supported RFC 3511. There was a time when we traditionally wrote our terms in a terminology draft, where the definitions also appeared, and then the methodology was a separate draft. And that dates all the way back to the very first pair of drafts that came out of the benchmarking methodology working group. So it's really good that you're getting some consistency with those terms. Brian, since you've got a lot of good items on this particular slide here, I'd like to interrupt and maybe we can hold some of the discussion that we had planned. Just so that we can close on a few items. How many, sure. By the way, how many slides have you got here?
Just one more after this.
Oh, all right, then this is, let me take a quick look at it. All right, so there's more changes there. All right, so so let's handle this set of changes first. All right, so does, I forgot to check this. Does this mean that the title of the document has changed now? Which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, it does. It more accurately reflects the scope of the draft. Good. Because I suddenly, one day I suddenly began to wonder, well, what do they mean by next generation? Are we really talking about the modern generation of firewalls, the ones that are here now? And this is a much less ambiguous title. So thanks for going there with that change. Yeah, that's good as well. Does that mean that the file names should change as well then going forward? Because currently embedded in the file is NGFW, of course. Should we change that to?
No, absolutely not. Let's not do that. In fact,
Okay, that's
there,
fine.
there are ways to track that fairly automatically now, but it's absolutely not necessary. Given
At this
that,
point, yeah. No, I get
yeah.
it. Yep, that's fine.
All right. So then, we've got that change, and then we've got another topic here. The author proposal, since we brought this up, is to have this draft supersede RFC 3511, which is the roughly 15-year-old benchmarking methodology for firewalls. What we need to discuss is whether the working group agrees with that, and then we also have to sync it up with the IETF terminology, where supersede is kind of in the middle between where we might call update, and of course there's a million definitions for what constitutes an update in IETF. I think there's some good ones out there, and they may have even tried to standardize a few. But the obsolete definition is fairly clear, and I think that's what you meant with.
I think we lost Al.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
Now, the interesting part is how long it takes him to realize it.
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull down the materials as well. Al, did you hit mute by accident, maybe?
That looks like it. although maybe I didn't hit it, and something else happened. But now it looks like I'm back, and the screen is visible as well.
Nope,
No.
I don't see you sharing.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's try that again. Presentation view. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it completely reset my settings here. So let's go with entire screen again. Allow. And now it looks like it's going. All right.
You don't run SolarWinds, do you?
No. Yeah, it looks like there was a bobble here that caused me to drop maybe momentarily enough to lose everything. So let's continue forward. I assume that somewhere in this discussion of supersedes, I was basically trying to get the answer to the question, do you think supersedes means to make RFC 3511 obsolete?
That is our sense of things. When we reviewed 3511 and compared it with where the state of the technologies were today, compared to what we're looking to achieve with this draft, we felt that the changes were significant enough that it would supersede 3511.
Okay. All right. So then it sounds like in our IETF terminology that we would need to update the header to say that that this sort of the status obsoletes RFC 3511. That's going to have to go into the abstract, and we'll have to edit the that intro paragraph right at the end, the last sentence, to use the terminology obsolete. If we
did update the introduction paragraph right at the end. We are now saying that it says all these reasons have led to the creation of a new network security device benchmarking document, and this document supersedes 35.
Right. So the key point, though, Brian, is that we have to use the word obsolete or makes obsolete RC 3511, and that's
Okay.
if the working group agrees on that. So
Understood.
I'm gonna. I mean, it's a always an unofficial ask when we're in the when we're in the live meeting like this. But are there any objections to obsoleting or making obsolete RFC 3511 in the context of publishing the draft that we're discussing now?
Hi, speaking as a participant, when you say network security device, I think that spans a pretty enormous set of devices.
Correct.
Clearly, next generation, we can arm wrestle over next generation, but a firewall is pretty clearly in line, pretty clearly transmitting and receiving, but there's a whole another set of devices that are just passive, and so they wouldn't even be doing that, but they would absolutely call themselves a network security device. So the change in title, I was wondering if you could say more in specifically why go to such a generic term versus just shoring up your potential confusion over, hey, next gen versus current or modern or what have you.
Well, and it's interesting, Sarah, I just put up on the screen here, Bala has made a comment in which he says, no change in the title. The title is Benchmarking Methodology for Network Security Device Performance was used in the previous version. I assume he means RFC 3511 as well.
No. I mean
No,
we keep constant. The previous version, 05. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we have the same name, but we changed the wording. Okay, and if you see the introduction, we just wrote, okay, this draft not only for the next generation firewall, so also for other next generation security devices is applicable this benchmarking.
Okay. All right. So let's do this.
So I'll reread the current draft, but as it stands, as a participant, it's going to take a lot to convince me that one draft is going to cover benchmarking the passive and the active devices, because I absolutely wouldn't expect that. Open to being surprised, but highly skeptical. And again, if you are really going after if you're really going after a firewall, I see it even in the abstract now. It's got the NGIDS and IPS, which is an interesting term. But I'm just saying, hey, as a participant, it's going to take a lot to convince me that that's the right approach to take. I definitely wouldn't test my IDS the same way I would a firewall. That's not instinctively how it comes across. So I will reread it with a finer tooth comb. And circle back with feedback, just proactively giving you the, hey, I think taking on such a generic, broad, wide term is going to be, it feels like a tough sell.
So, okay, fair enough. Given that, and given that, what we've developed here, in our opinion, goes way beyond the scope of just the next generation firewall. And we have moved all the security effectiveness stuff regarding next generation firewalls and next generation's IPX down to an appendix, and clearly focused on performance testing aspects of things. We think that it would definitely lend itself to next generation firewalls, next generation IPSs, web app firewalls, anything that any network security device that handles traffic and makes a security decision based on that. If you agree with that statement, and that's an assumption on my part, if you agree with that statement, then how should we change the title of the document to more fit with what your thinking is?
Then, you didn't mention IDS, which is a really good example. So pulling that, I think, helps. But so can I defer to answer that? I mean, knee jerk, what I would
Sure.
say is, hey, benchmarking firewalls or whatever we're going to call FW, and then IPSs makes lots of sense. But let me reread it again and come back with that question in the back of my mind, and I'll circle back on the list to give you some feedback.
So one of the things we're wanting to avoid is have a test lab decide that they want to use this draft to do testing, and they say, well, we can use it in the web app firewall space from the performance requirements aspect of things, and then have a WAF vendor say, yeah, but it's not meant for WAFs because in the title it says such and such. So, I mean, we're trying to avoid that.
I understand. Like
Okay.
I would say the same thing though. Let me reread it again with your question in mind and the objection you're trying to avoid. And let me see if I can come back with some reasonable, if I'm going to say no, let me see if I can come back with some proposals that might make sense.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
Very good. So I didn't hear any objections to making 3511 obsolete, but it sounds like we've got a little more discussion to undertake anyway. But in the next draft, let's try that. Let's try that the working group looks at. Let's try that as a obsoletes 3511 and see what the reactions are, because that's something that's definitely got to be confirmed on the mailing list at the very least. All right. So then one other topic that came to me in my review, Brian, Bala, and Karsten. By the way, thanks so much for taking on 70 comments, and I'm sure that was really onerous toward the end of the process here. We're really making good progress toward clarification and moving this up to the next step.
Yeah, Bala didn't sleep much.
No, and I know exactly where you're living, Bala. I've got the same situation on my hands elsewhere. So let's look at this. It's the rewrite of section 6.3. That's the benchmarks and KPIs. And when I went through that, I fairly quickly noticed that the term, let's see. So here's the procedures. Here's the tests. Here it is. So we still got the term throughput. And in benchmarking methodology working group, we've got a pretty solid definition of throughput right now, but it doesn't come from 2647. In fact, what you'll quickly see here is that the term throughput, it's not defined in 2647. And I think if we're talking about TCP or other reliable transport layer traffic, then I think we're talking about, where is it? I think it's good put, yeah. The number of bits per unit time forwarded to the correct destination interface minus any lost or transmitted. So
Al,
yeah,
I think I think universally, I'm probably sticking my neck out a little bit when I say universally, but a significant majority of the security product vendors didn't like us using Goodput.
Ouch. Yeah. So, do you mean reliable transport protocol throughput, or specifically? I mean, I wouldn't want to add an adjective here like TCP throughput, because pretty quickly people are going to want to talk about reliable transport throughput, which is based on UDP and QUIC.
Right.
And that was one of the other things that kind of was bouncing around in my mind when we were talking about next generation firewalls as well, and you're just throwing that terminology out. So we need to be sure the vendors understand that the benchmarking methodology working group has already claimed this term.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
If we need, so all I was going to say is, if we need to, let me back up. If we need to explain what happened. This is, yeah, wait. And then this one. If we need to call this good put, but then make some explanatory statement later about the devices in the marketplace sometimes call this throughput, but it's different from the RFC 2544 throughput, and on and so forth. Then that might get us to a compromise, but we can't leave. I don't think we can leave a bare throughput here and have it be different than 2544.
So, Vratko just made a comment saying that throughput is now defined in 7.1.3.4. Maybe let's just scroll down to that one and see. Perhaps we can use the wording there, and then I'm not entirely sure.
Is there a reason we can't use the BMWG defined?
I'm there. If we're going to be taking it and taking the input from the BMWG, which I think we would be fools not to, back to our internal working groups, I just want to make sure we have a very clear explanation as to where the recommendation is coming from and why.
I just wanted to clarify why it's not possible to measure RFC 2544 for firewall benchmarking test. Two reasons. First, RFC 2544, you explained frame per second, frame rate, not the bit per second. For stateful firewall, it is important. The payload is very important, not the frame per seconds. So that's why I think RFC 2544 is mentioning frame per seconds, but I think for the stateful firewall we have to measure bit rate, because the firewall is taking a look on the bits and packets, payloads. So it's important to show the bit rate than frame rate. So that's one point. The second point, let me finish one thing. The second point. Go
ahead, Bala, but I'm going to circle back to that first one. Please go ahead. I'm sorry.
The second point is the RFC 2544 says, okay, so you measure the throughput with 0 packet loss, right? But as you know, this is layer 7. There's a retransmission TCP, and you will see packet loss, and then you have a retransmission. This is slightly different than stateless firewall or the layer 3, layer 2 device testing. So this is a little bit slightly different than 2544 test, throughput test.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. But I will say that the RFC 2544 throughput is used commonly also at the packet layer, but the results can be expressed in bits per second. That's where we compare it with the maximum theoretical bit rates and frame rates and so forth. We just have to put the right story together here so that we don't have this overlapping single term, which looks a lot like RFC 2544 throughput. And if you're saying that this is a kind of a layer 4 and above throughput, a transport layer throughput, then that's fine. But It doesn't say that here.
Yeah, I think the only the problem is if you see the throughput, the RFC 2640 explaining not the throughput, is explaining bit per seconds. So we just take the same definition. The problem is we change the title. Okay, there you see bit per seconds as a KPI, but in our draft you see throughput.
Bits per second. But and so that's the problem I'm trying to fix. We can't say throughput alone here. We've already got that term claimed.
Mm.
And it's a different definition.
You of course want consistency.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm pointing to if you're thinking good put, and that's what you just explained, Bala, with retransmissions and losses that are taken care of. That's fine. And that's a term that was used in RFC 3511, the previous firewall benchmarking RFC. But that's it. So it sounds to me as though, and of course you can express good put in bits per second, but it sounds to me as though you really want to take a step back, sit down, and decide what you're really measuring here.
Yes, sir, we need to talk internally. The problem is good put. You have to eliminate all retrans. So we are talking here stateful traffic, right? So mostly TCP. So if you want to measure good put, you need to eliminate all retransmission, retries, and everything. And the point is, the system is complex. Not only the test under device, only the test devices, test equipment. Then we need to clarify, make sure, okay, who is dropping packet or who is making retransmission, and all kind of things we need to eliminate in order to measure the good put. So good put is the traffic rate without any retransmission delays and anything.
Well, it takes advantage of retransmissions.
Right. So I think this is covered in 8238 definition of application good put. But I would like to think about the majority of the readers. What is the target audience? So of course now somebody's calling me. The target audience, and the target audience is just the orderly guy or girl who just has an informal understanding of throughput. So the question is, isn't it possible to overload the term here for the purpose of this layer 7 related document?
If we put enough adjectives in front of it, Karsten, then we've got something to talk about.
Okay.
In other words,
that would be an idea to say application throughput.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then use that term consistently throughout the document.
Right. Because the other thing is, I mean, the term throughput has been used a lot, but I'm actually not sure where is the official definition that would claim to be valid across all BMWG documents.
It's in it's the definition is in 2 places, actually 3 places. Actually 4 places. It's in RFC 1242. It is in 1944. That's the original version of 2544. And actually the wording is correct in 1944 because something went wrong in the editing process, and the definition in 2544 is missing some words. And so the 4th and final place where the definition exists is in the errata for RFC 2544, where I pointed out that something went wrong in the editing process, and the full definition is also for RFC 2544 is in the errata. This is all for RFC 2544 throughput. So yeah, there's a long history here. We're carrying some baggage. A lot of it, a lot of this took place before I got very active here in 2003. But I'm responsible for noticing the mistake and entering the errata. I'll take credit for that. Nevertheless, we've in our context, and this is a standard as much as anything in our industry. This is the definition we use. There are lots of other ways to define this, but within our working group, we've got a good solid foundation to stand on. And if we get close to that with another term, let's clarify it with at least one really useful adjective. I think that would be a good way to go.
So I'll Carsten, Bala, Brian, if I can add, it's Maciek here. I think this work. Firstly, thanks very much for driving it. As I said in my email, excellent work, and I think this is an opportunity for us to actually standardize on nomenclature, exactly as Carsten you said, because making it complicated for the users is not going to help anybody. And just a quick example in the normal packet blasting tests. We use in our tests the RFC 2504 nomenclature, but we quote throughput in bits per second and also in packets per second. Here we're clearly dealing with the stateful traffic, so we are after something related to transactions and transaction throughput, and we have transactions per seconds, and we have connections per seconds and other metrics. So it would be good to use this. It's an excellent opportunity to actually look at defining this term well, so that there is no ambiguity for stateful traffic. And the only issue here is that independently on what functions are performed on the packet flows, there will be quite huge dependencies on not only the packet size but also the protocols used, right? Whether it's TCP/IP, QUIC, and so on. So there will be always a number of, I think, adjectives plus protocols or some other metadata associated with the performance metric word, whether it's throughput or transaction throughput or something. But it will be good to have that clarified here. And I think this is exactly the place, this draft. So that's
good. Good, thank you, Maciek. I think that's a decent summary of what we've talked about and the next steps. Anything further on this topic? It's an important one, obviously, to the working group and to the world at large.
I would like to point to two parts of this definition, which are not included to my knowledge, in any other throughput definition. The first one is the word allowed. So for security devices, there is a difference between traffic that could be forwarded and traffic that's allowed. Okay, maybe that's not so much a problem. The other problem is the correct destination interface. So in load balancing or any other kind of layer 7 device, it's important that the traffic doesn't just arrive, but that it's actually forwarded on the correct output port, egress port.
Good. Those are great points.
The question is, would you suggest, Al or anybody, to reference a definition of throughput and then supplement it, as we've tried here? Or should we just ignore the differences in the definition and say we say whether it's allowed traffic or not is okay, whether it arrives at the correct egress port or not, okay? Or what should we do? Or define something completely different?
Well,
a throughput, which is the firewall throughput.
Right.
Yeah. So actually,
we've got the terms correct destination here in the old good put definition. So that's a good start. And then you know, you have to, you basically have to decide where in the, you know, where in the stack this definition is going to exist, at what layer. You have to nail that down. And I think your point about allowed permitted traffic, this is the, you know, that picks up the aspect of, you know, the firewall operation, where it's going to be tossing away traffic potentially while you're trying to forward allowed traffic. So those are the kinds of tests that people are interested in. So I'm sorry, that was, I think that was Maciek trying to get in here too.
Yeah. So Carsten just stimulated my thinking here. Clearly, as expressed earlier, I think it was either Bala or Brian, we're dealing here with quite complex packet processing functions deployed on those devices or appliances. So the and I think I mentioned this in my comments, but I didn't really get to the bottom of it because I clearly ran out of time. So the presence or not of CVEs, which is very well handled in the draft. So the throughput, or we actually measuring performance here, and it's performance of clean traffic and also performance under attack, right? With AVCs, with CVEs there. So there will be a CVE dependency, and Carsten, as you said, is what does matter? The permit throughput, and the deny actions are ignored. I mean, they all matter. So somehow the performance/efficiency definition should capture that. We're dealing with the security devices that are filtering the good from bad. And the definition should capture that somehow. This is not just dropping packet due to the capacity issue. It's not the only action that we're measuring here. We're actually measuring the response to the malicious traffic.
Yeah, so that's very good. So there's absolutely some aspects of this definition that are unique, that we want to retain, and that we want to differentiate from the RFC 2544 throughput in all definition in all of its forms. I think that's the summary of where we are at the moment.
So in order to avoid us, sort of like us, meaning like the folks from the NetSec Open side and the folks from the BMWG side going back and forth on this, I'm wondering whether it would be useful to have a call with a small group of people. So like I'm thinking Maciek and maybe someone else or a couple of others from the Benchmark Working Group side who's interested, and then some folks from the NetSec Open side, so we could just nail this and sort of get something where we all agree, and then we'll put it, write up a draft definition, circulate it amongst everybody, and get everybody to bless it, and then put it in the document. I think that might be a more efficient way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need an interim meeting for that necessarily. As long as everybody from BMWG who's interested is allowed to attend.
There would be no limitation. If somebody wanted to attend, it's great, but as well as I do that the smaller the number, the more effective the results will be.
Yeah. So, but I'm just trying to avoid the overhead of an interim meeting when we're basically going to be talking about one definition. And I think that's fairly reasonable. It's it's really just a bunch of knowledgeable people getting together, each side of perspectives, expressing their views, and then as you say, Brian, nail it. That's go away and get it right. That's what we're talking about here.
Basically, yeah.
So that's I think that's a good way forward on this. Does anybody have any objection to proceeding in that way, to have an informal call at a reasonable hour where where we hope anyone who has a strong interest in this topic, and basically there were 5 of us who spoke up today, 6 on all the topics of this draft, but plenty of people who've made comments along the way and might want to join us. So it's a small but very interested group, and I think that would keep within the manageable size. And then of course any preliminary agreement is going to be reported back to the group, both in the context of like an email status and updated words to the draft, and then working group review that follows. So nothing's going to happen here without full access to the information.
Just looking for the brain trust to weigh in.
Yeah. And I have to confess, it will be very helpful for me to hear additional perspectives too, and I hope everyone is open to that opportunity.
I think Robert raised his hand. Al, I think Robert raised his hand for.
Oh, we did? Okay. I've got stuff covered up here. Go, Robert.
Yes, so obviously I don't know this technology very well, but I do want to share the fact that the comments that I think a couple of you are making of this should be a different term, as in at least it should have some adjective to describe the throughput is different. I think that is key. And although it's hard to speak for what the ISG would do during review, I suspect that if you try to redefine throughput in this document to have a different meaning, I suspect that would cause angst within the ISG review. So it doesn't have to be a completely different word, but at least making sure that it is quite clearly different, I think would be a good thing to achieve. Having a meeting to discuss this going forward, that sounds like a good idea to me, but just to raise that.
That's good. That sounds supportive of the general direction we're going, and also as a reminder to everyone, which is something which Rob is very familiar with. The IESG sometimes has people on the committee on the group who've done a significant amount of benchmarking, and from that experience they go, oh, what the hell are you guys doing here? So our work is often looked in on at the very last stage by very knowledgeable people and performance measurement experts and so forth, who only get to weigh in at that point. And we have to be ready to defend what we decide.
And that only serves to help make the final result better.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Good. All right. So, Brian, you've got, I think that was the last one on this one. You've got a few more topics on this highlight of changes here. So, I think, so, good.
So the changes to the actual test cases, 7.1 through 7.9, basic intent and process was unchanged. Anything that we changed there were for clarity's sake. We added the IANA considerations text that wasn't in Section 8 previously, and then we added the associated RFCs that we referenced to Section 12.2, informative references, and then we moved. We moved the .SUT classifications that we previously had in Section 4 into Appendix B, and so on, because it wasn't applicable across the board. So it just made more sense to make it an appendix.
Good.
That's pretty much it. I mean, if you take a look at Diff 2, you'll see all the work that we did. So.
Oh yeah, tons of work there, and much appreciated. So
and I really, speaking on behalf of all the folks on the NetSec Open side that have worked on this, the input that we've received and that we anticipate receiving going forward is great, and I think it will really in the long term work out that we'll have a much more solid document that I think will survive the test of time.
Great. Well, I'm glad the NetSec Open community who has contributed so much to this is also open to the wider review here. That's what we've been trying to get going all along. And as far as the next steps go, we've got we've got Sarah's review. We've got to work on throughput definition with an adjective, the something throughput. And we've got to get some additional review by folks. If any interest has been piqued today by these discussions and the topics, because this is and we're going to nail down that obsolete part of it too. So
yeah.
I think
If anybody, Al, I'm assuming you're interested in being involved on this call, Maciek as well, I'm assuming. But if anyone else is interested, drop me an email. It's bmonkman@netsecopen.org, and we can set that up.
Yeah, please drop your email into the chat, Brian, and that will help people get that right away.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. Should I post? Yeah, God, I hate the idea of saying this, but should I post to the BNWG mailing list an invite to the meeting, or is that just asking for?
Yeah. No, I think that's fine. I think that we should be open as possible, and I don't think we're going to get a tremendous overage that would mess up our conference.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Being open and transparent as possible is the right way to do it.
So let's have those steps that I've mentioned, and we'll before the next draft is published, and then when the next draft is published, then we'll do a working group last call, which will hopefully finish it up.
Hey, Sarah, how long do you think it'll take you to go through the 50-odd pages?
I think it's a day per page, Brian. So can you give me a couple months? No. Can I have I will do it as soon as I can. I'll try to get to it this weekend. In all honesty, I was going to have somebody on my QA team here at work take a look as well, because it's something we've
great.
About. So, if you can give me a week formally, that would be best. But I will do my very best to get my review in this weekend.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I that goes way above and beyond what I expected. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I was just trying to recognize Maciek in the queue. I've done a bad job of managing the mic line here today, but I think everyone's been heard that wanted to be heard. Go ahead, Maciek.
Yeah, sorry. So I also forgot to raise my hand earlier, and I was barging in. So apologies for that. Now I'm following the discipline in the mic line, and I was waiting patiently. Thank you, Al. I actually have one or two generic comments, if this is a good time, because we're going to leave this draft now, correct?
Yeah. I think if you can just do that in 5 minutes, that will be great.
Okay, so I will not be. I am sometimes taking time, but I'll keep it short. So the one question I have is, and I'm not sure I asked it in my review. This is about security devices, appliances, but is the aim here also to address the virtualized or cloud-based security offerings?
We are starting to look at that, yes.
So do you think, so it is the target for the draft directly, or? Well,
tangentially. I'm not, we're going into looking at this with an expectation that things might have to change, that may lead to a requirement to have a new draft, but or a new RFC, but we haven't reached that point yet. When I said we're just starting to think about it, I do mean just.
Okay, so because if it does, then this draft should be acting as a foundation, right? At least that's my. That's my thing. It's something to build on. There is a lot of new network as a service, this marketing SASE things, secure access, secure edge, and network security generally became a much bigger thing than before due to COVID and the number of people living online. So work, life, and so on. So, okay, so thanks very much, because there's a direct impact there on sizing, as the current sizing, and I think I raised that, is clearly focusing on physical appliances, but maybe that's something to keep in mind. The other one is the comment I made, and I guess I still need to finish the checking because you actually did address most of my comments. So thank you very much for that. But there are a few loose ends, which I guess my questions or points were not very specific or specific enough, and that is the features that are recommended to be configured. So I guess I'm going to revisit this point and clarify further on what is the recommendation, recommended versus optional, and the use of the word should consistently be enabled, because IPS is always there, and if people take that this is the baseline, that IPS is always there, that excludes cases where IPS is not there. So
the purpose of our recommendations when it comes to the features being considered was not necessarily to test stringently the effectiveness of these features. The goal was to ensure that the features were enabled, that we verified that they are acting and running in a manner that we would expect, we being the testers, would expect, and then leave them on during the performance testing. And so we were not looking to make this a document that was an exhaustive security efficacy test.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess I'm going to revisit and reread that, because that's not the and I guess I included this in my comments, and if there is any scope for mentioning that some of those features or any of those features could be tested in isolation in terms of measuring their efficiency. But let me think about that, and I'll come back to you with comments. I understand that there is time for completing the review, because I actually only skimmed through section 7.1, which was good, but I would like to spend a bit more time on that. So I understand that there is a time for that before the next revision, or is that not the case?
We welcome comments and suggestions. Some things as evidenced by how we responded to your previous comments, there will be some that we think make a lot of sense and that we will change. But with respect to the test cases 7.1 through 7.9, it's going to be a reasonably high bar that we'll need to discuss with you in order to make changes in that area if it's going to affect the tests themselves, the execution of the tests.
I don't expect that, because the content is already the best thing I've ever seen written down. So okay, all right, but I get the point, Brian. So we'll do our best to turn it out as soon as possible.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Maciek. Right.
Okay. So we've got our next steps. We've got a couple of additional comments, and assuming all that's been captured in the notes, we'll get it out to the mailing list very shortly. Brian, Bala, Karsten, thank you so much for your efforts again. Like you said, thank you. And we'll now move on to the next topic, if that's okay. Actually, the next topic is the multi-loss ratio search. And I want to make, what do I want to do here? I want to make this bigger. So Maciek and Vratko. Which one? Is it you, Maciek, who's going to present this? Or Vratko?
No,
Oh,
it is
Vratko's here. Yeah,
Oh.
it's you, Vratko. I need to beg a 2-minute health break here. If you want, you can start slowly, but I will be right back. Okay.
Okay, I think we can wait 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So 2-minute health break, everybody. Okay, I'm back, and it's and I guess if you start slowly, Vratko, we'll pick up anyone else who needed a health break. Thank you for waiting.
Okay, so hello, I'm Vratko Polak. I'm presenting an update on this draft. MLR search means multiple loss ratio search, and now I see that it is not mentioned anywhere in this presentation, so hopefully next meeting it will be somewhere there. The draft status is the important thing, and first of all, the draft was adapted. That means that now it has different file name with a different version number, but otherwise the contents have not changed in any meaningful way. My plan was to prepare some changes for this meeting, but I have run out of time, so there are some changes, but they are not yet turned into the next version of the draft. They will be soon, but not just today. So this presentation, I will be spending some time describing what the changes are and why I think they are needed. And of course, we welcome more reviews. I think we can jump to the slide number 7. The slides in between are just recycling the older presentations, useful for people who are not there or are not familiar. We can go back if there are some specific questions, but this is the important thing. So here I'm describing a situation I've encountered where the old logic is not very efficient. This leads to the search taking longer to give a final result, and there is one number highlighted in red. This 3 lines, third line from the bottom. This is too low because there was a measurement done at 11, which when it is considered, it will be clear that the algorithm does not need to measure this low. But the previous logic was short-sighted and didn't see this implication, so it was doing more measurements that were necessary. So this is like this is a fake result. I do not have a real run with real numbers to show this behavior, but at least the numbers are easier to follow. So
sure.
We can go to the next slide, where I describe the improvements. Initially, my idea was to just make the draft obviously being able to support multiple loss ratio goals, because currently it focuses on just two goals. One goal is exactly zero loss, which leads to NDR, no drop rate, and the other one is some non-zero small ratio, which leads to PDR, partial drop rate. It is obvious, for me at least, that the previous logic can be generalized to support any number of ratios, but it wasn't not clear from the previous text how it should be generalized. But then I encountered this one inefficiency, so I endeavored to fix this inefficiency while doing the change from fixed to configurable number of loss ratio goals. And the main change is that, contrary to the previous version, I mean currently published version, there is no coupling between which measurement belongs to which ratio, because in the external search this can change. We have seen that previously measurement result that looks unrelated turned out to be related. So the main change is that now there is quote-unquote database that holds all the results, at least for the particular measurement duration, and the fact which of those results are acting as upper bound or lower bound for a particular ratio is computed in runtime after each new result. So this way, even old and basically we avoid the previous situation. Even measurements that when they were done looked unrelated, now they can become related based on this computation during runtime. There are some technicalities. For example, I am now introducing effective loss ratio. This is to avoid false decisions when measurement at higher rate leads to lower loss ratio, because the intention is still to be conservative in the search. So if this so-called ratio loss inversion happens, we do not trust those lower loss ratios, and we assume they are the same as the next smaller rate. And this is the example. Yeah, I think I have. There is a link for the code so that people can check how exactly the current logic looks like. I still do not have a good enough English description. How exactly does it look like? Mainly related to what happens when you start new phase and you do not have all the bounds at the current duration. How do you use the results from the previous duration? That is not yet put into the words correctly. This is the thing that I have already implemented in the code, so it is there. I just need to describe it in English, so the next version is ready. Okay, so this next slide shows what happens with the new logic, and you can see there is green number 11. This is what the new logic does. It realizes that previously unrelated measurement now works as a valid bound, so the search ends more quickly. And by the way, it gives a different result. That is because the DUT is not behaving deterministically in a deterministic way, but there is no easy way to deal with it with this framework. I believe this is a good solution to have equally valid result, even if it is different when this result comes sooner. So I think this is the important change.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how you handled the device, as you put it, the device under test be performing in a non-deterministic way with respect to increasing load. I mean, this is the problem, we recognized between physical devices, where we're pretty much able to get rid of the transient problems, and then the our virtualized versions of the same devices, where transients come around and they are a necessary part of operation, but they bother our longer term searching, and kind of give us a clue that the resource limitation answer is below a certain load level, when in fact, no, that was just a transient that happened, and the resource limitation is actually above here somewhere. We've attacked that problem a couple of different ways now, I think, and it'll be interesting to see what your solution is here. Thanks.
Yeah, so for this particular algorithm, my goal is to optimize the search logic, so the algorithm never finds any inconsistencies and thinks everything is good. Of course, this does not happen because the algorithm starts with shorter durations and then need to remeasure with longer durations. So here you can see the PDR after 5-second measurements was between 15 and 16, and then in 30 seconds it was forced to concede it is lower. So this will always, well, this can always happen, and sometimes this happens reliably. For example, if there is some interrupt that is periodic in time, it may be impossible for the 30-second measurement to not encounter this interrupt, and the previously good result, which was lucky, now can never be achieved after any repetitions and so on. So this algorithm is prepared for this. The improvement is that things only get more stable within one specific phase. So when we switch from 5 seconds to 30 seconds, things can break, but they will not break as badly as previously, because previously the search for PDR has broken the previously stabilized search for NDR, which is the inefficiency we want to avoid. So with this new logic, we will avoid it, but the algorithm still needs to be prepared for the fact that DOT changes behavior just because we are using longer trial durations.
Right. Right. Okay.
And yeah, there are some future improvements. Basically, I envision that after some months, I will do another go at the algorithm to do some more improvements. One of them is basically introduce back the improvement that I had in the code previously, but now I have removed it to make the code more simple. Of course, I will need to test it whether it is still desirable, but I have a feeling that it will be desirable. That is basically earlier phases can use larger interval width, so the next phase always start bisecting the previous interval, because this will never hurt and it will save one bisection in the previous phase, so it always saves time. So I think it will be back. And there are more possible improvements. One is to make configurable external search. In my example, when there was a failure and the previously good bound is no longer valid, the algorithm was doubling the interval search, but in practice this is not the optimal way to do. We, for example, decided that quadrupling the interval width gives better results, because usually when you find out that the old bound no longer holds, the new bounds are not adjacent. There are several expansions away. So by increasing the interval length more aggressively, we can save some time on average. So this will probably also get back. And finally, there is uneven splits. This is some information theory applied to this. If the current interval width is not a power of 2, we can spend some time by not splitting evenly, but trying to get closer to the power of 2 of the resulting intervals. For example, 1 to 2 split is the logical thing to do if you find yourself to be in 3 times your interval goal. So this will be another improvement on average. So I think it will be worth documenting in this next version. So
I agree.
there you go. So I just need to first finish documenting the changes I have made for this meeting, and then after some time implement the rest of the improvements and document them. So expect at least 2 more draft versions.
Well, that's great. I think you're headed down the right path for several of these, Vratko and Maciek, and you know, just in my opinion as a participant, this is getting better. I even encountered a case like the one you described with you know, the binary search with loss verification algorithm. We were a little bit aggressive on moving the limits around and had to fix one of those, and you know, it only really showed up because of you know, one kind of corner case of testing. So but it's good to get these things fixed before we send them out in the world. So that's good. Any comments on the draft or the future plans here? All right. Can we get some volunteers to review this as when Vratko and Maciek make a new draft available? Okay. Well, we'll continue to push for reviewers on the mailing list, and thank you for your time and your preparation today, Vratko and Maciek. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
And congratulations on this is your first version of the working group draft. So you know, now's when the working group really has to start paying attention. That's with my working group chair's hat on.
Yeah, congratulations. Good call out, Al.
All right. So, Maciek, yes.
Yeah, just Vratko, in case you haven't seen, Karsten asked the question on the chat whether there is any plan or an observation of MLR search used in other contexts than FDIO, which is where the code is being developed, and are there any other implementations on the horizon? Vratko, do you want to take that, or do you want me to talk?
Well, there is one version of a MLR search library in Python available on PyPy, but it is an older version. That's what we are currently using in CSIT. Basically, in FDIO, we do not have a good process to publish different versions as quickly as we are able to produce them. So we definitely want to improve on that. And other than that, I am not aware of anybody else trying to implement this algorithm. I think everybody that I know of is using this Python library.
Yeah, and in terms of who is using those, I know that the NFV bench guys were using it at some point. I don't know what is the current situation. I've been interacting with Alec Hawthorne, so Al, you may know better the situation there. And But in the context of FDIO, we do have, but that's FDIO, Carsten, answering a question. We have members of Linux Foundation networking, where FDIO sits, together with OpenID and so on. And we have the Intel and ARM as at least two parties that are using the MLR search. But that is done with Sysint code. And we're currently testing VBP and DPDK in FDIO. The other guys are testing, whatever they develop or verify. I don't have a full visibility. The main, in case it is not clear for folks, and I don't know to what degree we describe it in the draft intro. The main goal here is to really reduce the amount of time it takes to discover the rates, and the target environment or deployment scenario is automated test execution for benchmarking, run as part of the CI/CD system to verify the performance of physical appliances or virtual appliances. And apply this algorithm not only to packets per second or bit per second throughput, but we also have applied it now to connections per second and stateful throughput. Let's put it this way. So we believe it is quite universally applicable as alternative to a straightforward binary search. And with addition of the multi-rate support, one can now define not only zero frame loss and some non-zero PLR, a packet loss ratio, but more rates if one desires. So hopefully this answers. Thanks.
Good, thank you. When it comes to NFV Bench, I think that's in its sunset mode of operation. That's my quick feedback there from the parent project. What we now call Aniket. Open Platform for NFV has become an Egyptian goddess of the Nile. Aniket. So yeah, it is kind of nice. So we will we'll look forward to the changes and the updated drafts, Maciek and Vratko, and thanks very much for your discussion today.
Thank you.
All right, so on to the next, and that is Vladimir. And he wants to tell us a little bit about his work at the hackathon and maybe some other topics too. Looking for, yep, he's still here. Vladimir's still here. So can you be heard, Vladimir?
Can you hear me now?
If you
Hello?
speak a little louder.
Can you hear me now?
Very faintly or very low level.
Wait a second. Can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to test the microphone with Meet Echo, so I changed the microphone now. Yeah, it's a short sequence of slides, so we can go to the next one. This briefly describes the goal for the project. Obviously, it has the draft, and then there are 4 repositories with the test code for the test case implemented in Python. There is a netconf and Yang specific code which implements everything related to Yang and netconf, parses the configuration, and it calls a command line tool. And this command line tool can be implemented for any type of tester that already exists. And then we have like a reference implementation in hardware which is done in Verilog, and even a hardware box and PCB which connects like off-the-shelf FPGA board, so that we can synthesize that. So we can actually measure how good other test generators are implementing this draft, if they implement it. So this is the first slide, and if you go to the next one.
Okay.
Do you hear me well, or should I speak louder?
I can hear you just fine, Vladimir. You're much better once you change microphones or something.
Okay, good. So this should be fairly simple, even for people without interest in testing. We have even like tags for the interfaces and the device. So we have a tester, and we have the same device implementing the device under test, just different SD cards. And this was the setup for the hackathon. So if you go to the next slide, this is the last slide, and this is a detailed description of the implementation. So we have a software implementation which you can run on any Linux hardware, which is going through the socket API and the kernel and the DMA, comes down to the Mac. So it is not as deterministic as the other one, which is the hardware Verilog implementation, which is just configured through a register interface. And both devices have the same command line to interface. So actually it's very simple to select if you want to use the software implementation or the hardware implementation. And the netconf code, like the young core implementation, just calls command line tools. So if you are a manufacturer of test equipment, you just need to make a command line tool. You don't need to know anything about netconf or young. And it's implemented in a transactional way, like you have a command line tool that starts the traffic generator for a certain interface, and then if you make a change, then it stops it and starts it again when you do a commit in netconf terms. So I'm trying to separate the netconf complexity from what people actually doing traffic generators and analyzers need to know. This is important if this draft is going to be a success, I think. So this underscore text, this has links to the repositories, and everything is open source. So if there is anyone interested in how we do it, it's more than welcome to check it out.
Very good.
Yeah, and I think important point with this next step with the draft is to find actually serious organizations which are interested in it. I'm not seeing much of a point of pushing the draft before such a party exists. I can continue working on it. You are more than helpful bringing focus to the work, so anyone knows that it exists. So we can just continue doing that on the next hackathon.
Well, we've, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pretty much finished with the presentation. The last slide just shows the amount of work done during the hackathon. If you go down, the last one, yes. It's a very minimal amount of work compared to the entire project. So this is just implementing the latest changes. And it is, yeah, we granted also public access to the netconf node. So there are some existing validation tools that can say if the implementation is okay or not. But this really doesn't have much significance for the standardization work with the model. Like this is more like we test our implementation of it, but other people can have their obviously own implementations, and this is not that significant for the workshop. This was more significant for the hackathon presentation. So this presentation we didn't have a chance to present during the hackathon, so it's not a duplicated effort. Anyone interested can check the presentation down here.
Very good. All right. Well, I noticed. I'm just going to jump in with my participants' comments, Vladimir. I wanted to check on something that I thought I saw in the benchmarking page for this. So let me look a little bit here. I'm basically trying to bring up the data tracker for this. Where is it? Related drafts. So it would be down at the bottom, right? Oh yeah. So there's some Yang validation returned warnings or errors on the data tracker page that includes this draft. So that's something to take a look at. It looks like it's only one warning though.
Let's see. Mm-hmm. I'm certain this is a bug in the Yang-Lint tool that is one of the validation tools. But we can take it on the mailing list. I will double check and I will reply. But I double checked it when I submitted the draft, so I will triple check it.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I mean, it looks to me here as though there's really something trivial. It wasn't even worth pursuing with everybody else's time. But I saw this. I did see this red Yang indication before, and I wanted to check that if there was something we needed to do and something you knew about, we could make that as a comment here today. I think it just to bring it to your attention, it's probably something that will turn something quick you can do that can turn that that indication green very quickly.
Okay.
Thanks. So then let's go back to the slides. And does anybody have any comments on the work? I mean, just as a background, we did see some pretty good comments from Tom Petch, and I think some other reviewers plan to take a look at this. And frankly, this is one of the more active proposals in the working group now. So we might consider adopting this work and pushing the draft through our normal process if that's what folks want to do.
I'm open for getting some co-authors and someone who can help me with the work, and I'm open to accepting anyone who the group can nominate to join me in this. I think there is very good opportunity to collaborate with the ML search draft, because as I see it, the ML search is command line tool, in my view, that performs the search, while I am implementing a draft specifying the parameters for another command line tool, which is the trail. So the search algorithm is calling iteratively the trail, and that's what we have standardized in the draft. So these are two drafts which are they should be able to work together. So I can make a review of the search algorithm draft and propose an interface. I looked into the Python codes and in the FDIO repository they have, and I think it's easy to make it a command line tool. And it is much easier for a reviewer to look in a command line tool than a gigantic elaborate framework written in objective Python. So we can collaborate with them, and then we can get some idea of how things can work out with both drafts, I think.
Okay, and any response to that?
I will respond. I was raising hand, but you were not looking.
Oh, sorry. You can tell what I'm looking at, and it wasn't that. I apologize for echo.
I was just hoping you will switch back to C. Never mind. From my point of view, MLR search uses a pluggable piece of code. It is called measurer, which is doing measurements. Basically, it gets all the traffic definition and duration and rate and expects a result. And I can envision this. I'm not sure about the Yang, but definitely the CLI tool be part of that measurer. There will be some layer connecting it together, but yeah, definitely MLR search has some requirements which are subsets of what this draft seems to be describing, so it should work. And yes, in FDIO, we are trying to improve our code to make it more modular. Basically, we already have some command line utility with ad hoc arguments, so it will be, we are planning to make it more, let's say, systematic. So I will definitely look more deeply into this draft and either change the FDI code to follow it more closely, or ask questions, comments on the mailing list when I see something that does not really fit. I'm not sure if I will be doing as much work as to be called co-author, but you can definitely count on me to do reviews and comments.
Very good, thanks. I note that Rob made a comment here. Always happy to see IETF standardizing more Yang models. Yes, of course. So, any other comments on this? And we've got one volunteer to do some reviewing. That's good. Anything else on the Yang model draft and the work done at the hackathon?
I don't have anything to add. I'm much better at handling things business on the mailing list. So me talking is like exception. So I'm just happy that we have some more people on board and we can collaborate, and that is like this online IETF session more than successful for me.
Very good, very good. Well, that's what our mailing list is for, and we'll try to minimize the amount of time that you have to be live on the calls, Vlad, if you want. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a nice day.
All right. Well, then I think we've reached the point in our agenda, which is what we call any other business. And here I quickly wanted to mention that there was an email from KJ and his team of co-authors on the containerized network benchmarking draft. They wrote to us about a short update, but also said that this meeting was going to take place in the middle of the night for them, and so they would not try to join us this time. But that message is in our archive if you haven't seen it, and please take a look. That draft is still active as well. So just adding that point. All right, so then I'll open the floor to any other business. All right, hearing none, it remains to me to thank my co-chair for her contributions to making things move along here, and to Rob for taking notes today. All the draft developers and authors and commenters. This was a particularly good meeting to have 2 hours, because we certainly had plenty of comments to deal with, 70 on the list, and I think we earned a 2-hour meeting without any doubt. So thanks everybody for making it worthwhile and productive time all around. So we'll see you on the mailing list.
Thanks, folks.